All right. All right. All right. Let's see. Are you there?
Can you not see me? I was touching up my appearance.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not on Zoom at the moment. I'm on Facebook. So I just when there's silence briefly, I just get nervous.
Let me whistle. Mouth is a little dry for whistling, but
Don't know. Oh, this is so slow. All right.
is this a good video filter?
Nice. Nice. There we are. Okay. So let's go to our wonderful If You Could See Me page and see if we are up. Doodly doo. Good morning, people. Let's have fun with technology. Hooray. You're now interacting as the If You Could See Me project. Yes,
Woo.
I am always interacting as the If You Could See Me project.
Hello, so am I.
Let us see. There we go, darling faces. Look at that. All right. Thank you to everyone who is so patient and wonderful. All right. So this is what we do. We have to do a little bit of I have to do a little bit of surgery on the
Not,
stuff.
not me.
No, definitely
I
not
did
on
not
you.
sign
I am
up for
not
that.
qualified to surgerize people, but I am qualified to surgerize the screens that I look at things on in the Facebook. I want to see the um, the comments, but I don't want to see the video because it's slightly delayed. Makes
Yeah,
sense?
it'll be like watching TV and the voices and the sound and the mouths and the voices don't match.
It's a lot of yeah, a lot of different things all at once, but I want to be able to see people commenting so that we can comment. Oh, there we go. Kimberly, Dan, Kimberly, LOL at Melissa's face when you said surgery. I love it. So I didn't see Melissa's face, but I can see Melissa's face now. There's
Yay!
Rob. Look at all of our friends are joining us this morning. So exciting. So welcome to the If You Could See Me podcast live on Saturday morning. I have made the decision, friends and family, to get really consistent and to sort of pare down the process of my podcast because trying to schedule all different times of the week and times of day and all of those things just it what it does is it creates boundaries to actually being able to have these conversations that I think are so important. So I tend to be an overthinker, as I think everyone who's ever met me is aware, and an over worrier and an over accommodator. And what happens is that stuff just doesn't end up happening. So what I decided to do is just follow the model that Lucretia and I have been doing for the last couple of months, and that is just show up here at 10 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning and have a conversation with the folks that are members of this If You Could See Me family. So the majority of our podcast guests for the year this year will be past and uh, current participants in the project. There will be the occasional special guest that will come in, based on time and slots and all of those things. But it's really important that we have these conversations. They're always really valuable. I want to have them more frequently. And the only way that I can make that happen is to do it this way. So I just made a decision. Oh, good morning. Melissa said good morning. She's multitasking this morning. So my guest today is the ineffable uh, member of our If You Could See Me family, Melissa Earley.
Hi.
Welcome and thank you for joining me and for agreeing to be live on Facebook with like less than an hour's notice because
I
again,
showered.
I did too.
And dressed. And
I
dressed.
Absolutely. I really am trying to protect myself from overthinking, and so some stuff is just going to be on the fly. This whole project is a practice in self-compassion, and I have to start with myself, because if I don't, then I'm full of shit. So that's it. Melissa, you wanted to be on today because you wanted to make it on in March, in particular, to talk about something near and dear to your heart and your brain, and that is that March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. So, talk to us a little bit about what motivates that, why you wanted to come talk about it.
So, the reason I wanted to talk about Brain Injury Awareness Month is I have experienced multiple brain injuries over the course of my lifetime. And for me, all year is Brain Injury Awareness Month.
Right.
Okay, that didn't make sense. But anyway, I'm pretty sure y'all got the gist of it. Every day is Brain Injury Awareness for me. Right. I pretty much don't get to escape it. And a while back, in June of 2013, I had a brain injury that I always tell people, don't laugh when I tell you how this happened, kind of thing, and don't judge and that kind of stuff, because the way it happened is like, seriously, like how could that be a brain injury, and also, how did you even do that to yourself? Like, what kind of, yeah. But I pulled the hatch of my vehicle down on top of my head and I knocked myself out. And it's like, it sounds ridiculous every single time I explain it. And I can imagine being on the receiving end and, somebody saying, like, okay, so you got a traumatic brain injury from that. And it's like, yeah, and it turned my world upside down. Literally. And the ironic thing is that my partner, Nona, the reason I was even dealing with the hatch of my car was she'd been in a head-on collision in where she's from, in Waynesboro, like, right over there.
Yes, in the backyard.
Yes. Yeah, right over there. Waynesboro's right in our backyard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But and here literally, like, headlight to headlight with like 1970 pickup, so it's like made of real material. And I was going to get her, and she was injured, not badly, thank goodness. And then I, like, it's like, oh, you're not going to one up me, I'm going to have a brain injury kind of thing. It was not intentional. But it's like, how could that little teeny tiny, almost, insignificant event change the whole course of my life? Mm-hmm. And it did. And I spent months and months and months and months trying to explain to people in the medical field that I was trying to get help from, that little teeny tiny, seemingly insignificant event was not insignificant in how it affected me and my brain and pretty much my entire body, because it affected my eyesight, it affected my executive functioning, it affected how I processed my emotions, how I would go from 0 to 100 and reduce the people that I absolutely loved to a pile of rubble. And it was like I was a spectator watching it happen. Right. And I could, like, see it happening, but I couldn't stop it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, it was miserable. And I know being around me was miserable. And one of the things that was probably the hardest was watching people leave my life, because like I wasn't who I was prior to that day anymore. And I think that that's, from what I've heard other survivors of brain injury talk about, and things that I've read, that's very common, because that person that you knew is gone, and it's like, you know, you don't know, it's like a stranger, and so, you know, you don't want to be friends with this stranger, or you don't want to hang out with them because they're difficult. And so those losses, and grieving the loss of yourself at the same time, and you know, it took me to a very dark place. And having to kind of explain how bad off I was over and over and over again was kind of like the icing on the cake that made it that much worse for me. It's like, you know, no, really, I am messed up. Let me explain how many ways I messed up. And that's like, you know, it's you're supposed to, you know, work on positive self-talk, and you know, here I am every visit going, no, but this is wrong with me, and this is wrong with me, and this is why I need help. And I know that I'm sitting here and I look okay, kind of, well, I guess my hair looks okay, you know, kind of thing.
You look beautiful.
But it's like, you know, I really do need help. And then I wouldn't get it because I presented mostly okay. Mm-hmm. And that's why Brain Injury Awareness Month is so important to me, because I want others who either have had a brain injury or have a loved one or a friend to just be aware that it's not a one size fits all. It doesn't have to be traumatic. It could be acquired, like a stroke or strangulation. That's something that's finally getting a lot of attention. It's usually domestic violence or sexual assault when that happens. And, you know, a lot of those go undiagnosed. And it gets kind of the lumped in with, you know, oh, that's from the symptoms this person's having is from the trauma of the event. Mm-hmm. And yes, some of them are. However, there's an overlap in the symptoms that are coming from the trauma their brain actually suffered. And there's this overlap, and you have to kind of work with both to get the person back to their ability to have their best life from moving forward. Yeah. And I just the struggle that I've had to get the services that I need, and I'm a pretty good advocate for myself and for others. I can't imagine somebody who's not very good at advocating, or just not that they're not, not that they're not very good at it, that they just don't know who to call, where to look, you know, where the resources are. The possibility of someone just, you know, giving up is real. And if I can do anything, if one person hears this today and says, wow, that's kind of, you know, I did hit my head. I don't know if I got knocked out or whatever, but I'm feeling kind of some of those things, and they seek out some help, and it maybe improves their life a little bit. And that's what
Or
I
they
hope.
know somebody who experienced one of the things that you're talking about, a family member maybe, or someone who's close or used to be close to them, and they say, gosh, that person really changed after that seemingly minor car accident, or that, fall last year, and I cut them off, or I was really lacking in compassion because I thought they were just being stubborn, or
Mhm.
I thought they were being overly demanding. If that individual can get some insight into the situation and say, gosh, what that person in my life really needed was help, rather than the cold shoulder, or really extensive boundaries, then you're also creating change. Melissa, I wanted to just point out, I don't know if you're seeing the comments on Facebook, but
No.
Kimberly just said, oh my God, you are describing me. I'm crying because I have never heard someone else explain what I've gone through. Holy hell, I love you, lady. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So already, well, first of all, we have a lot of brain injury survivors in the If You Could See Me family.
Yes.
And I think that, like, a lot of very, like, at
Hmm.
least a minimum of 10% of our actually more than that, of our participants are brain injury survivors. Every single one has a different experience, has came to their injury in a different way, has had a different recovery timeline, but the one thing across the board is that sort of, it's on some level, it's an invisible disability, quote unquote, an invisible situation. You
Hmm.
can, every single one of these individuals I see, is, sorry, somebody is somebody is messaging me on Facebook right this minute.
I
um
heard
you
the
know
beep.
is every single one is like, it you can't always see
It's
it.
like a fingerprint too.
Right,
They're that different. They're that
right,
unique.
exactly. But people don't always understand, and it feels such a huge weight to have to explain it over and over and over again. And at the same time, you know, if a person can't see what you're going through on some level, there is a certain amount of information that you have to, communicate, so that they can have an understanding. And so it's this fine line of all of those of us in the world who are not living with a brain injury but want to help, being compassionate and learning that sort of internalized compassion, extra, and then also, you know, an individual with a brain injury learning how to sort of pare down what they need and what they have to say in a way that is both effective and not repeatedly over traumatizing them with,
Right.
constantly having to communicate that. Yeah, Rob said, fingerprint, well said. It's so true. Um, so, and what you said about being a pretty good advocate, like, Melissa, you're the single greatest advocate I've ever met. And I've met a lot of advocates, and I've met a lot of really good advocates. But everyone. You are super knowledgeable. You are wicked smart. Like, it's, you have so much going for you in this area, in addition to the fact that you are a nurse. So you have this whole sort of understanding of the medical stuff. How do we help the person who doesn't know, because they've never had to know? First of all, they've never had to advocate for themselves because this is new, and this hasn't been a world in which they've had to navigate. One. Two, after a brain injury or any significant, life altering situation. And Heather and I talked about this on the last episode. the sort of dehumanizing aspect of having something that people don't necessarily see or can't
Right.
fully understand because the science isn't there yet, or, whatever. And so they're told over and over and over again, there's nothing wrong with you. You're fine. This is all in your head. This is a function of mental health issues. This is a function
Right.
of trauma. How do we help? How do we develop a community? And again, this is me putting you in a position to have all the answers, and I don't expect that, but I want to have a conversation about it.
Well, I don't have all the answers. I just have more than everybody else.
True. That's true.
I'll tell you
You're my go-to person for a lot of stuff. So.
Very quick story about that statement. When I was in, I think, like 7th grade, I had a teacher tell me, "You think you know everything?" And I said, "Well, I don't know everything. I just know more than everybody else." She didn't let me stay in class very long that day. So anyway,
but the other question about that is, what do you do when that's true? We also tend to like shame and vilify super smart people, and not that you should have a giant ego, but at the same time, like,
I think
how do you lift kids up rather than smash them down and say, go away, you're annoying.
I've had to embrace I'm not intimidating, people are intimidated.
Yes.
Because I have run into that often, and I kept asking, what are you doing wrong? And somebody like sent me that meme or something. I'm like, memes have like, they're my best therapist ever. Yes. But that's literally, I've had to embrace that one. And that's kind of my go-to when I feel like that, why is that person like trying to discredit me?
Right.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm not intimidating. They're intimidated. Okay.
Right. What other people think about you has more to do with them than it does with you. And right. That's why we say it's not my job to stay quiet so you can stay comfortable.
Bingo.
Right.
But so back to your question.
Yeah.
Of what people can do. If you're advocating for someone, a loved one or a friend or just whoever, the first thing is to educate yourself on the condition, the problem, the whatever. Like, there's so many misconceptions about brain injuries, especially when you use the term TBI, which is perfectly acceptable. But when even the medical community thinks of traumatic brain injury, the vision that comes to a lot of people's head is, major, bone crunching car accident followed by months in a coma and that kind of thing. Well, even the way that they classify with the mild, moderate, severe.
Right.
Mild is it doesn't affect the person mildly.
Right.
It does. A moderate one, it's not like, well, it's just kind of sort of bad, right. And so the understanding what, your ask is going to be based on,
Sorry, she's being very needy this morning. Keep going.
It's okay. So, knowing that, if somebody comes away from the emergency room with a diagnosis of a mild concussion, right. That doesn't mean that it's not that bad, or so the kind of educating yourself prior to showing up at the medical appointment is huge, because the medical community isn't as well educated as they need to be.
Right. Well, and actually that Rob just asked that. What insights would you give nurses that have professional experience, but they don't have personal experience with brain injury?
What I do is my first go-to is, like, I explain that my experience of, like, imagine that your brain is who you are. It's the sum total of you, of your experiences over the life of your lifetime. It's your personality, it's your knowledge, it is your brain is who you are.
Mhm.
And imagine, if you injure a part of it, you've lost that piece of yourself.
Right.
And, neuroplasticity, that's a great thing, but it takes decades. And so, you can't sit around and wait for decades and hope that that piece, and even if it comes back, it's not going to come back the same, because you don't have the experiences of those same experiences to rebuild it the same way. So, it's kind of like trying to explain, to say, look, I have this injury that has literally robbed me of, no pun intended, robbed me of, you know, my part of my identity.
Right.
So, like, if talking to a nurse, because a huge part of most nurses' identity is being a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine you woke up one day and somewhere in the night, somebody took your nurse away, and you woke up and you're not a nurse. And that's how it feels after a brain injury. It's similar to that. You pre-brain injury, you're this one person. Post-brain injury, to whatever degree, you're this other person, and you may not even know who that is, and you may have to get to know yourself, and that's really hard.
Well, especially when, we live in a society that does not value healing or taking any time with anything, I mean, shit, look at the pandemic. Look at how, in many ways, we were just expected to just go about business as usual. It's the thing that I am the most frustrated by with all of it, is that, there was no process for how can we support one another, ourselves, and all of the systems that are in place, with a pushing pause, by saying, we got to figure out how to do this, and we can't be expected to go back to working 50 hours a week and sending our kids to school and doing everything exactly the same way as we always did. We have to value, the need for the human to learn how to heal, to learn how to process this, we love it, new normal, right? And, oh, well, you
So
can
I
just
have
work from
another
home.
setting on my dryer,
Right,
because
exactly.
normal is a setting on the dryer.
Exactly. So, it really is just like, I think all of our conversations here are about, like, understanding the function of, the our socialization, and the pressure that we put on ourselves, and the lack of kindness, and the lack of accepting our own humanity, that, that we're sort of expected to just put down your head and just go 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 go, and don't breathe, don't take care of yourself. And so, when we're all faced with the same challenge, we can't even agree that that would be valuable. So
It's,
what are we doing when it's one person in our world, one person in our community that is going through one massive challenge, and we're just like, aren't you over this yet? Can't you just, like, come on, let's move. Like, we need to dismantle that entirely.
it's like we, meaning the human collective,
Yes.
really struggle with having expectations being fluid.
Yes.
And when somebody is having any sort of difficulty in their life, any sort of something that they need to step back and take care of, we struggle with changing our expectations of that person.
Right.
And, you know, I think we also struggle with changing our expectations of ourselves.
Yeah, no question. No question.
And with a brain injury, you may not be aware, because self-awareness is a big deal with brain injury. And because it's, you know, unless you have, you know, visible scars or things like that, other people, maybe if somebody hasn't seen you in a while or something like that,
and they don't
know. And, you know, it's not like, you know, you post on Facebook every day what's going on. I mean, some people do, and it's kind of cool sometimes to do that. And then other times, I mean, if I had posted my first 6 months or whatever, it would have made no sense, because I would have been, you know, so my teapot fell over, and because my aphasia was so bad, nobody would have been able to have any clue what I was saying. Like,
right.
Your teapot fell over. What? You don't drink tea, Melissa.
You just have a teapot?
Exactly.
Right. Explain to people who don't know what aphasia is. What
aphasia, there's actually 5 different kinds. And the easy explanation is that it's a communication disorder, either of being able to communicate to someone, or being unable to adequately process what someone is communicating to you, or both. You can have mixed. Some folks can't talk at all, which is I got the word right here, but it doesn't matter. It's a type of aphasia.
Right.
Word finding is a big part of it. Not knowing the word for a simple object, things like that. Not being able to process what somebody is saying. So, and I have a mild form of it, which I'm using mild in the
Right.
usual sense, mild, but it doesn't mean it always is mildly affects me, because like sometimes I'll get in the middle of a sentence and it's like, and then I'll just say, yeah.
And it doesn't feel mild in that, you know, in that instance where you just like all of a sudden can't continue in your conversation.
And the other piece of it for me is and it doesn't seem like it would be part of the aphasia, is I will not stop talking when I'm tired. It's like boom, boom. And anybody that's been on the phone with me, I'll tell them, like, you just need to hang up, because I'm not going to stop talking until you just hang up. Just say, you know, bye, Melissa, I'll talk to you some other time. And I'll be like, okay, so, but yeah, but remember when, and it's like, just hang up. It's okay.
Right. Well, but I think you do a really good job of, you know, like you could teach a master class in self-advocacy in a way that is, you know, both informative, not overly informative, not and you're always funny and disarming. So you're able to say, you know, this is what's happening right now, or this is what's going to happen if I'm, you know, or I can't meet at that time. That's not really the best time for me to, you know, to be able to think and process and do all of those things. And it's just sort of very matter of fact. And I imagine that it's just taken time for you to sort of learn how to, you know, express your needs in that very effective way, aside from the fact that you're just an excellent communicator in general.
Well, thank you. I think I had a wonderful speech language. Well, I told her speech. Thank you. Speech language pathology therapist.
Yes.
And I was like, sir, when I can say that, like, without pausing, does that mean I graduate? Because that is, if you're going to teach somebody to talk again, that title is just way too long. And then I dubbed her my speech teach. And she is still amazing. She now works, she's in charge of speech at the Sheltering Arms Institute, which is the kind of shipping of uh, VCU's inpatient with Sheltering Arms inpatient. Her name's Allie, by the way, in case anybody wants to.
Hey, Allie.
Hey, Allie. But I spent somewhere between 18 months and 2 years in cognitive rehab, which is just kind of a conglomeration of executive functioning and speech and all of that. And I think she taught me a lot of the humanness of what was going on with me. Mm-hmm. And that was almost as important as teaching me the mechanics and the workarounds of the physical stuff that was going on. And I owe her a lot for that, because it was I was not accepting what was going on with me. I was like this. I even said to the first doctor that I worked with, who also, he selfishly took a promotion to further his career and better care for his family.
How dare he?
Rather than stay my doctor, and is now in charge of the Sheltering Arms Institute. I mean, wow. Hello, does anybody that's in the chat feed think that that's like okay?
Unacceptable.
Exactly. No, I'm very, very happy for him. But he was telling me one day, he's like, your brain has done, like, the physical healing has plateaued, and the work here is you've got to just work on your coping skills, the work. And I was like, well, that's unacceptable. Right. And he said, you've got to accept the unacceptable. And I'm like, do you realize that sentence doesn't even fucking make sense? What do you mean accept the unacceptable? Like, think about that. Like, it's unacceptable. How can you accept it if it's unacceptable? And like, that's how concrete my thinking was. And then like 2 or 3 days later, of course, I have posted it on Facebook, because what else would a totally typical human being do? Uh-huh. That's what you do. That the whole story about the accepting the unacceptable, and that I'd figured it out. What he was trying to say was that it may feel like something that you just can't do, that you just can't internalize and wrap your head around. And if I was going to move forward, I had to make goals to move forward and let go of, I wasn't going to be the person that I was before. Yeah. And if you think about it, it doesn't make sense to make a goal to move backwards. Yeah. And that was a huge turning point for me, because it was like, I'm going to make a goal to make forward progress. Right.
Based on where I am, not where I wish I was.
Right. And I kind of hold on to that even now, because I've since had another head injury. Mm-hmm. A little over a year ago. I also had COVID, and I was probably in a club. Everybody wants to belong, right? Well, I belong in a club. I have an actual diagnosis of hang on, it's coming. Train's coming into the station.
Oh,
good. Did I make the motions too?
I was just giving us space to let the train come into the station.
No, I like that. Breath helped. It helped. I like that. No, of neurocognitive something another, like decline disorder, jacked up, I don't
As a
know.
function of COVID?
Yes, secondary to brain infection related to COVID-19.
Unbelievable.
And so it's part of the, which I actually, I guess I'm because my neuropsych testing that was already scheduled
Mm-hmm.
kind of happened after my COVID. It's probably helping a lot of the folks that are in that long haulers group that still have that brain fog. And it's a thing, it's real, because some of the things that presented on my neuropsych testing didn't present on any of the others that I've had previously, and there's really no other explanation for it, other than because it's things that I can pinpoint that started like at the time of that I had COVID,
Right.
which was totally a blast. Like having COVID,
Oh, thank you.
totally a blast. Like I mean, if I could do it again right now, yeah, no way.
No way.
But I'm invincible because I've had COVID. I've had my both shots, and
nice.
I still wear a mask when I go in public.
You're like
But
Teflon, Melissa.
yes, Teflon.
At least to COVID right now.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So I want to
ask me a question, bring it back.
Well, no, it's fine. I mean, you're always fascinating. We could talk forever, but I wanted something sort of came up for me when you were talking a minute ago about accepting the unacceptable. It made me think of, you are trained in dialectical behavior therapy. You are trained in the wise mind concept. You are trained in radical acceptance.
Oh boy.
Right? And so, I think it's valuable to when the patient or when the doctor becomes the patient, when the healer becomes the patient, we have to put it's really easy for me to say to my clients, wise mind, radical acceptance, change what you can, accept where you are, move forward based on the position that you're in, not the position that you used to be in or that you want to be in. Just go from where you are.
This is happening because it's supposed to. You just got to accept it and
those are bad. Those are bad words. I would never say to somebody, "This is happening because it's supposed to." Oh my!
Marsha Linehan said it.
Oh, it's awful. I don't like those.
No,
words
I'm
at
just.
All.
I don't use those. I just like the first radical acceptance like scenario that I heard from Marsha Linehan.
Right.
Is that like everything happens because that's how the universe works.
Right.
It just happens. It's it's because something didn't interfere to stop it to happen.
Right.
And when I say like emotion, I don't mean it like, oh, your snake got run over by a tricycle because it was supposed to happen. No, right. I don't mean it like that, but like with the circle of emotions, emotion, thought, behavior, emotion, thought, behavior kind of thing. It's like that's all supposed to happen that way, and unless something intervenes,
right,
that's what I mean by that. I don't mean that like I don't mean the whole like
well, you were destined for this misery you are experiencing. Right. There's nothing anybody can do about. No, I get it.
Yeah, I just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you.
Like I had two heads.
Right. No, but it is a reality that you can know all the things. And because we are sort of a place where we talk about mental health and we talk about our recovery and we talk about treatment and we talk about, things sort of from that 360-degree perspective, I think that, I think there's value in, okay, so you got the training, you've done the work, you've run the groups, you've been in rooms where this information is presented, where you have confidently presented this information to other people as a roadmap for healing and,
and I know it works. I
What?
know in my heart of heart that it works.
Right.
It's
And
effective.
yet I can't accept the unacceptable.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Right.
Damn
Yes.
it.
Exactly. Exactly. So how do you reconcile those two things?
Because actually DBT is a evidence-based treatment for post TBI, for the issues with emotion regulation. And when I went through DBT before I was trained in it, radical acceptance was the most difficult part for
Yep.
me.
Mhm.
I used to always say bullshit every time,
Right.
pretty much, because it was like I don't have to accept this. I can change it. It's like, no, there's some things you just can't change because you're not in control of it. You know, you can't control other people. You can't, you know, change how the world, you know, turns and you know how society is to an extent. I mean,
Right.
there are ways to intervene, but you know, even that, it takes a lot of people and a lot of time
Mhm.
and a lot of work. But you know, right there in that moment, you can't change the fact that you know, you have to renew your license, and
Right.
that's going to take you 6 hours at DMV.
Mhm.
And I hated that because control, not power, but control is safety.
Yes.
And having the TBI, I felt like I had lost what little control I had
Right.
because I didn't know what my brain was gonna do next.
Right.
And
And that was your brain has always been your, like,
it's saved me. It's gotten me. It's kept me alive. It's got me where I am. And it terrified me that, you know, I felt like I had lost my safety net, and I had to. It took literally at when Dr. Kuntz was the doctor's name. It literally took me like 2 full days on the computer, like looking up many definitions of acceptance, many like evidence-based, peer-reviewed research articles on acceptance, trying to prove him wrong in order for me to read enough to be like, well, that's exactly what I need to do. And so for me, it was staying in my head in order to get to a place where I could connect my head and my heart
Mhm.
and internalize that if I do accept this, and I found one particular quote, which was the one I posted on Facebook to show everybody that this was what everybody needed to do, of
Right.
course.
Of course, because you have more answers than everyone else.
No, just because I needed to have misery loves company. But, but literally, for me, I had to research it. I had to find evidence, which is a big part of DBT. It's evidence.
Mhm.
And so I found my evidence, and that's how I came to radical acceptance. See, it's hard for me to say
Full
now.
circle, right? Full circle.
And that's kind of the that is one of the premises of DBT is the evidence. You know, find the evidence, and I that's what I did. I found the evidence, and sometimes it it takes someone else to help you down that path.
Yeah.
You know, not to just tell you,
Mhm.
well, just look. You know, if you would just open your eyes and see,
Right.
it's, you know, more of a guiding, you know, I'm going to walk this path with you,
Mhm.
beside you, not lead you and be in front of you and not be behind you and push you. I'm going to walk it beside you. And, you know, I'll be right here and we'll figure it out together.
Yep. And so often that's where that's where things fall apart.
Mm-hmm.
Is that either medical professionals want to just tell you what to do and not listen and not walk the path with you, and the people in your life either don't know enough or can't, or any number of other things. And so if we can sort of come together collectively, in our advocacy, and continue saying, doctors need to know A, B, and C, or medical professionals in general, therapists, everybody, needs to really understand the value of, what is that term that I'm not going to be able to remember? But
The
joining with the person.
collaboration.
Thank you. Just being along with side them and helping them to question and to determine what needs to happen, and and listen, as opposed to prescribing and demanding and trying to control the situation. And on the other side of that, helping family members and community members understand to develop compassion and understanding and patience, while also there is something to be said for setting appropriate boundaries, letting someone who's struggling know, look, I want to help you, I'm here for you, but I need you to not speak to me that way.
Right.
I need you to find within you, wherever you can, whatever level of capacity is there, to access your control and not aggressing against me when I'm trying to be here for you, right? And then creating a sort of elastic give and take that is, sometimes I understand that it's a function of the brain injury. Sometimes I understand it's a function of the emotions that are associated with the brain injury. And,
right.
but like staying flexible and staying open to one another rather than just shutting people out and cutting them off. Okay, so we're nearing the end, but I love this question from Kimberly. So I think we should end on this answer. Do you feel that having a TBI has helped you to accomplish things that you wouldn't have otherwise set out to do or tried to accomplish?
Yes. Sorry, I don't know if y'all can hear my vicious dog in the background. I apologize for that. Yeah, my baby. Yes, I think that I would not have done as much like public speaking and advocacy and things like that if I had not had the TBI in the middle of nursing school in 2013, because it kind of, I had to slow down in my process. And I mean, a lot of things kind of happened, different speed bumps along the way and things like that. And I think it opened the door to a lot of different opportunities to kind of put myself out there and, advocate for some legislation and things like that I would not necessarily have had the opportunity to do otherwise. And it also helped me gain a huge knowledge base that I don't think I would have delved into had I not had the 2013 TBI. And probably the best gift that it gave me was um, Allie and I kind of like researched back through my lifetime, and we figured out that in 1990, um, like when I was on top of the world, pretty much, I had two full-time jobs, and the money that I was making for 1990 was unreal. Only time in my life when I could say that I had, more money than I knew what to do with. Um, and I had on one of my jobs, I had as a therapeutic wilderness guide, and I broke both of my legs, but I also broke the helmet that I was wearing. But because I was wearing a helmet, they didn't take anything into consideration about my head. But we figured out that if you break a rock climbing helmet, um,
You
you
hit your head pretty hard.
really hard. Those things are hard to break. I mean, I've seen them fall 900 feet and not break. um, so, and that's when kind of my mental health diagnoses, probably about a year or two later, my mental health diagnoses started. Um, and we figured it had to have been the head injury.
Right.
And because I'm not bipolar, um, I'm not DID. I'm not, I had probably 10 different diagnoses, and I'm not those.
Right.
And if I were, it would be okay.
Right. But they weren't the right diagnosis for you.
Right. And so knowing that the those years where I kind of fell off the face of the earth, and I spent more time in the hospital than I did out. I was homeless for a couple of years. Lost everything. That I somehow, knowing that, finally having the answer as to why that happened, um, it was related to having a brain injury.
Right.
And I'm not saying that if it were strictly a mental illness that, there's something wrong with that or bad about that. Because I talked a lot about that publicly and openly, without shame. Um, but I never really knew the why, or like which mental illness I had. Just, put your hand in the hat and pull one out kind
Right.
of thing.
Right.
But kind of knowing definitively, it all makes sense now. It was a head injury. It was, and kind of filling in that blank in my life was huge for me.
Well, so, and I'm gonna ask a sort of follow up question to that, because I think it's really a theme that a lot of times, if you have early childhood trauma, or if you have, that your doctors are aware of, or that your teams are aware of, or if you have, already been diagnosed with a mental health disorder of, some kind, they tend to not look beyond that for another explanation. And
Right.
it's perfectly acceptable to just say, oh, well, this is the reality of unresolved trauma, or this is, the reason that this is happening is because other things, are going on. And so, it's perfectly acceptable to throw this person away and not look, and to, have, completely underestimate the the full picture of what is actually going on, and that's such, such a disservice to you. Sadly, it happens to, to millions of people,
Hmm.
for generations.
And knowing the overlap piece that I was talking about in the beginning, and if you go to my Facebook page, I put up this. There's a pictures from the one of those brain clubs, um, the overlap with post traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury.
Right.
And when you have a brain injury, even if you don't have a history of PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
it creates post traumatic stress,
Right.
or it exacerbates what you had, because you're initially, at least, your coping abilities are kind of wacko.
Diminished. Right.
Yeah, thank
Right.
you. That's
Mhm.
better than wacko. Um,
Wacko is also a perfectly acceptable response. So, um, what is sort of like, what do you want to end on? What do you want to tell folks, or what do you want them to go away with? Oh, you've got your fingers crossed, so you already had something that you wanted to say, and I interrupted you. So go ahead.
kind of to end on, I think this applies, is not taking things at face value.
Mhm.
Usually it's the kind of people get kind of the opposite advice. You need to take things at face value.
Mhm.
I think it's more important to not take things at face value,
Mhm.
look beyond what you see, and think about what else could be the reason. Like, what came to mind is like so many kids that are diagnosed with like ADHD. A lot of it's executive functioning. It's like, I don't know a single child that hasn't hit their head.
Right. Right.
I mean, toddlers, they got these big old heads, and their center of gravity is way up here. When they fall, what hits first? Their head.
Yep.
I mean, it's just a thing, and it doesn't mean that they're all the every toddler parent is a bad parent. No, every toddler has bad balance.
Right.
They can't help it.
Yep.
And it probably 9 times out of, or 9.8 out of 10, they bounce back up, and that one, you know, itty bitty percentage of time, it's possible that they could have dinged their brain. And so they may end up going down a path when they get to school, and they get diagnosed ADHD, when maybe they have problems with executive functioning, which mimics ADHD,
Right.
but it has a whole different treatment modality.
Right.
So it's like, don't take things at face value.
Yep.
And that even goes with adults and just anybody. It's like,
Don't assume that you know what's going on with somebody and then prescribe an intervention based on your assumption.
right. And it's kind of like, when you pass somebody in the hallway and you say, "Hey, how you doing?" and they don't say anything back, don't assume that it's because they hate you. maybe
Right.
they're busy thinking about their meeting or whatever.
Right.
It's kind of that same principle. It's like, if somebody's doing something, a certain behavior, it may not be A, it may be B or C or even
Right.
F,
That's right.
so that's kind of my. And ask questions.
Yes.
Question everything
Yep.
nicely,
Nicely. So one of the things that I say,
appropriately.
one of the things that I have been talking about in a lot of spaces, uh, especially in like keynotes for professional helpers, is, you know, what is the culture of your workplace? Is the culture, you know, and this is for schools, this is for workplaces, this is for families, this is not just, but like, is the culture of whatever your environment a place of shame and blame and every man for himself, or is the culture of your space, you know, a place of compassion and support and collaboration? And you know, so you can be what, it can be one or the other. But you know, if somebody that you are, you know, around in whatever capacity is dropping the ball, instead of huddling in a corner and talking with everybody else about how
To them.
Joe is dropping the ball and gosh doesn't he suck, you know, go to Joe and say, hey, Joe, I'm noticing A, B, and C. How can we support you? How can we collectively help you to get back to where you were before? What's going on? What can we do for you? You know, like there is a choice in that situation, but we live in a world where shame is the baseline. Like it is used for compliance and control, and it's used as an educational tool, and it's used as a social control tool. And we gotta, this is my new term, okay, and you will see it everywhere. We have got to take shame off the table.
Yep.
We have to do it. We collectively, and that means I have to do it. I have to choose to do that, to not choose shame as a tool. And you have to choose that. And all of our listeners have to choose that. And we can create an environment where people can be motivated and inspired without, I mean, because you don't motivate or inspire anyone using shame. Let's be very clear. Like you may get compliance, you may get people to do what you want them to do, but that's not the same as them being motivated or inspired. That is not the same as helping someone to become their best. It
Right.
is forcing someone into a box and, you know, creating an environment in which it is impossible for them to thrive. And you know, so that's where I want to end today, everybody. Is just, Melissa, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you for always being so vulnerable, so knowledgeable, so effective at sort of communicating your experiences and helping people to really sort of see into your experience. It's remarkable. We need to make a commitment um, to take shame off the table. That, you know, we have these open, honest conversations about real issues so that these things don't live in the shadows anymore, so that people can feel seen. I mean, Kimberly has been on with us this entire time, and she has said repeatedly, you're telling my story, you're telling my story. By virtue of her seeing you, she feels seen. And that is right. That is like, that's what we're all about. So, you
Kimberly.
know, there you go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all. I am so just honored and excited to continue getting to show up here. Please join me on Saturday mornings. You know, I can't. It's possible that they won't all end up being live, but the majority of them will be live. And otherwise, if you know, if they don't end up being live, they will be on the podcast feed, so you can download and you can listen anytime. These videos will be available on YouTube. You know, visit ifyoucouldseeme.com if you want to tell your story, if you want to become a part of our community. Please, you know, just reach out to me. We have, you know, various options now of ways to get involved. If you're not ready to stand on a stage and tell your story, you can join our Restory community. You can hire me individually if you so choose. We're going to start some new groups with some new facilitators in this year, and you know, we're just going to keep on growing, and we're better when everyone else joins the conversation. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Melissa, thank you again. I love you endlessly.
Absolutely. Love you.
And everybody, enjoy your weekend.
Bye, everybody.
And now I have to do the awkward thing where I sign off.